So communication is very important. I look at it as a two-edged sword. Everything good, everything bad has happened because of communication. When you look at these guys, they have communicated, one or the other. When you look at Hitler, they say he was the best communicator. Remember Napoleon Bonaparte, who pursued history? Very good communicator. So you can use communication for goodness or for badness. The choice is yours. But we understand that once you harness the power of effective communication, then you can move, you can influence people to go and do and become and venture into different spheres. So, communication is just like a bridge. You see this side is a desert. These ends, how they call fruits in Luganda? Ebibala. That's why the Ebibala are. But for you to be able to get to the Ebibala, you need a bridge. More or less of communication. Communication acts as a bridge from me to you. What I think, what I feel, what I want you to act. The influence we have to affluence comes from the way we communicate. So it's very important because without this bridge, we can't get to where we want to go. And that's why communication is very important. Last month, I shouldn't say last week, we covered emotional intelligence and they fit into. But let me give you a story. Yesterday, I never watch news, unfortunately, because to keep my sanity and my mental health, I don't watch news because it's full of a lot of junk and I wouldn't want to be the dustbin. So yesterday, there's a report that was there about education, and these guys carried out a research, and they were saying that there is a low levels of proficiency when it comes to English in primary schools. And they hired a consultant who was talking about proficiency in English, but I looked at the consultant when he was expressing himself, and asked myself, really? Is this man talking what he's preaching or is preaching what he's talking? Because even him was failing to express himself. And he was trying to, bring out a report, a research that was carried out over 1.0. I'm like, seriously? So is the problem with the learners, the teachers, or the researcher? But for me, it spoke volumes, right? Communication intelligence. At times we have the knowledge of things, but we can't express them. Now for him, when it comes to desk work and doing his research, very good. But he's saying proficiency, and yet even his. So I think we should also hire consultancy to to work on him. So communication is very important. I look at it as a two-edged sword. Everything good, everything bad has happened because of communication. When you look at these guys, they have communicated, one or the other. When you look at Hitler, they say he was the best communicator. Remember Napoleon Bonaparte, who pursued history? Very good communicator. So you can use communication for goodness or for badness. The choice is yours. But we understand that once you harness the power of effective communication, then you can move, you can influence people to go and do and become and venture into different spheres. So, communication is just like a bridge. You see this side is a desert. These ends, how they call fruits in Luganda? Ebibala. That's why the Ebibala are. But for you to be able to get to the Ebibala, you need a bridge. More or less of communication. Communication acts as a bridge from me to you. What I think, what I feel, what I want you to act. The influence we have to affluence comes from the way we communicate. So it's very important because without this bridge, we can't get to where we want to go. And that's why communication is because it connects us from what we think and what we want and what we desire to where we want to go. But before we jump into communication, we need to understand, I normally want to find out the misconceptions. Because these misconceptions are the things that have lured us to stay behind, that are holding us. We think we know, yet we do not know. Or what we have been told we think is true, but may not be true. And the first misconception we have is that talking is communication. Not whoever is talking is communicating. You've heard this boy who wants to contest as a president? Yeah. That one who speaks like Mbide, but more. And we ask ourselves, is he really communicating? Because often in time when I listen to him, I think my My understanding is like 0.1. So does he really influence me to go somewhere, to do something? I just hear, they call it a desert of words. A forest of words and a desert of points. So not whoever is communicating is really talking. The second is being right is winning. Many of us communicate because we want to be right, want to be perceived as communicators. But that's not the essence of communication. It is not being right or being wrong. It is understanding someone. They normally tell us that whoever speaks, when you listen, there is something they are talking about. Now the question comes back to us, are we able to listen? The third is more information equals to better communication. Is it true? Imagine how much information do you have? This consultant had a lot of information, but did he sieve it down to pass on what he wanted to pass on? So you may be having a lot of information, a lot of data, but you may not be able to communicate it effectively. So how do we move onto communication? What are the gateways? What are the obstacles? What are the challenges? Now that we know the myth, what are some of the challenges that we face when it comes to communication? The first one is fear and ego. They tell us many of the things we fear actually never exist. Fear is an illusion. Think about it. It is an illusion. Because last time when we were covering communication intelligence, I told you and reminded you that you only have two kinds of fears. Fear to fall and fear of loud noise. The mothers can tell us. Yes. When you get a baby, they'll tell you don't shout. Or when it's sleeping and you shout, that's the fear. Or when you are walking yourself and you skip a step, you know how your heart beats. This cuts across. So that means that all the fears you have learned them. But the good news is anything you learn, you can unlearn. So the first fear is we fear the fear of fear in itself. Yes, it's the fear of fear in itself that we fear. Think about it. How many times have you feared something, but when you do it, you're like, so what was I fearing? So it was the fear of the fear. The second is an assumption and bias. We normally presume what other people. There is this quote by Cooley that I'm not what I think I am. I'm not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. Assumption. I assume what you think of me is what I am. But is it true? No. The challenge is, are you actually thinking about me? In this modern era, am I that important that you waste your time thinking about me? No. You have other things. So you're actually not thinking about me. It's an assumption about me that I presume you're thinking about me that is not true. Yes? Because everybody is thinking about something. So every time you assume that, I'm going to speak, what are these people going to think about me? That's a lie. It's a barrier. I normally, when I had just started these personal involvement and talks and trainings, I used to be timid. And everybody, let me tell you, gets timid. But the challenge is, how do you manage? So me, every time, what I used to do, when I would stand in front of an audience, I'd look at them like, wow, all these people are waiting for me to speak to them. That would pull up my confidence. Like, yes, I'm the spot, right? You've heard speakers who start with statistics, who start with stories, who start with personal life stories, who start with questions. That's a trick. They're trying to build their momentum. So they're also timid. Everybody gets. But how do you manage is the difference. So you have to first go back and ask yourself, okay, if I'm going to communicate, so what am I going to do to start my conversation? And often in time, when you get in front of people and they look at you and you start talking, you're like, so why was I fearing them? Actually, they did not know. I'm the spot, right? So it's an illusion and it becomes a barrier. The third is a lack of active listening. We covered this last time, that we do not listen. We presume, we want to judge, we want to criticize. So we are not listening at all, right? So when you think that you are listening, actually, you're not listening. Because for you to be able to listen, you need to be like just a baby. You attend to it. Last time we covered the difference between attention, concentration, and focus. Yes? Yes? Now you feel how it feels when you teach and you come back and ask the students and they all keep looking at you. That's what happens. So every time you presume, you stop listening. And that's a barrier. Mind heritage, empowering mind.